Oh, excuse me. Hi again, YouTube land. Um, so today is Monday, and it's like 4:30-ish in the afternoon. And oh, what a weekend it's been. So the interview for the fast food position went fine. I have no troubles or concerns with my interview skills. Um, and this is reinforced and bolstered by the fact that I inadvertently took 10 minutes out of the next scheduled interview's time because I was having a good conversation with the person interviewing me. I don't know if I'll hear from anyone yet. I was told it would be like a week from this coming Monday or Tuesday. So I went this past, Thursday? And it's only been, 4 or 5 days. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. 4 days. So I'm guessing it'll be like next Monday if I hear from anybody. And at this point, I can't exactly say I'm hoping to or not. My parents did come. They did spend the last couple nights with us here. And it was an interesting experience. My parents have visited us before on their way to visit my sister in Virginia, but that was several years ago, and it was when we were living in a different apartment. This is the first time they'd ever seen this apartment, the first time they'd ever stayed with us, and the first time that they got to meet Tribble, our cat. Excuse me. They came Saturday, and of course, their day was running late, as usual. The thing most people have a problem with when it comes to my family is our sense of timing. I am forever early. I mean forever early. Unless something major prevents me from being on time or more likely early, that's what I'm going to be. So if there's significant traffic, if there's a major problem at home that I can't get away from, if I am violently ill, I won't be on time, I'll probably be late, or in the absolute worst case scenario, I'm not coming. The reason I'm like that is my dad, who, when I was growing up, was often jokingly referred to as the late Lorenzo Raffa. Punny, I know. My dad has a tendency to be at least 5 to 15 minutes late, depending on the timing, the situation, and whether or not it's an important thing. When it comes to going to work, he's on time. Sometimes he's late, but that is usually related to traffic. He's good about that. He is a responsible guy when he can be and tries to be. But when it comes to things like vacations, days spent with the family, if Sam and I visit in the summer, it's a whole other situation because I like to be on time. I like to be early. I like to know where we're going to be and when we're going to be there so I can fit in everything to accommodate everyone, which is a whole other separate rant I'm not going to get into right now. My dad, and in truth, my mom Lynn as well, which is part of the reason they like spending so much of their free time together, they just like to take it as it comes. And I mean that in really the most easygoing, relaxed way you could possibly take that phrase, because it's not that they don't care about timing, they do, but it doesn't bother them, you know? They told me they were going to try and leave the house by 7 because it's a 5-hour drive from where they live to where we live. And that's not counting for the fact that they had to park at a relative's house and take the train into the city. So my dad decided to tease and bait me on Saturday morning when I tried to check in with him at like 8:30 about no, they hadn't left yet, they were still sleepy and they'd get going soon. And of course I snapped a little bit. I later learned that that was not true, and it was my mom who put my dad up to sending that text. I don't know why my parents like to bait me, but they always have. So they left the house an hour later than they expected. Almost an hour. But the reality is, if you leave less than an hour late when you're running on a vacation schedule with my parents, you're actually pretty close to on time. Because for them, that's really not that. I mean, I've been with them in situations where it's 2, 3 hours the next day. I mean, it can be really, really later. So less than an hour is really not that bad. The dichotomy I have to deal with, though, is my husband, who needs structure and guidance about what's going on because he is what can only be referred to as painfully uncertain when it comes to family situations and gatherings. And we've never had to have his parents over here for a prolonged period of time, such as staying a night or two. So it's not only uncomfortable for him because it's not his blood relatives that he grew up with, they're my relatives, but also he's not used to having house guests. I mean, by and large, no one has ever stayed with him since he's been living on his own. The first time it really happened was when I moved in with him. And we had circumstances to deal with that made things a little bit more intensive. Let's put it that way. And unfortunately, he wasn't feeling well yesterday. Triple, what the hell are you doing? So the whole day was kind of awkward. But the point of the visit is that my parents were coming because we were going to go to the MONKEES concert at the Beacon Theater. And we went. And we spent the day doing several other things. But it was a very long day. I mean, we were up and we were out of the house by 9, 10? And we didn't get home until midnight. It was a long day, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I was glad to spend time with them. But the concert itself was very good, in my opinion. My dad had been telling me for a week or so now it was getting very good buzz, great reviews. And I said, I try not to read concert tour reviews because it really gives me a slanted opinion. And it certainly alters my expectations of things, and I don't want to do that with this, because the MONKEES concerts is one of the few continual activities my dad and I have shared over the course of my lifetime. So we went, and it was what I'd hoped it would be. The Beacon Theater, if you've never been there, which I hadn't until last night, is not really intimate a venue. But it's also not like going to a stadium where it's you and 30,000 other fans. It felt like a somewhat bigger private show. To me, anyway. We were sitting on the upper balcony, kind of toward the middle and the back to one side, which only irked me because at that angle, half of what you're seeing on the monitor, or the screen they have on the back of the stage, is the lighting fixtures above the stage. So when they were running old Kellogg commercials and clips from their history as a band, and even during the couple of moments, a couple of songs they did to commemorate Davy Jones, it was a little irksome that you couldn't see what was on the screen, but I don't think it really bothered too many people on the balcony because the place was sold out, and everyone there, I would think, unless, the kids were there were kids younger than 10 there, probably has already seen the show and everything. The ones who were in the middle between my parents' age, which is 55 plus, and my age, which is 29, us in that neighborhood, we were kind of like the second wave of fans from when the 80s brought around a resurgence of interest in bands like the MONKEES. That was then This Is Now tour. Yeah, I still know that song. So it didn't bother us too much not being able to see the screen, because chances are good we had the images memorized. We knew what they were playing. The only part that really got emotional, I think, for the entire crowd at that theater was in the last couple of numbers, and then there was a subsequent encore, of course. But in the last couple of numbers for the show, they did Daydream Believer, and Mickey Dolenz, who had been talking the majority of the time, made comments about how Mike Nesmith had come up with this brilliant idea because they've been kicking around, how do we do this song? How do we do that song? We have to put together the playlist. You know, half the reason for the tour is commemorating Davy, who died early this year. And apparently Nesmith, according to Dolenz, came up with this thought that the song doesn't belong to them anymore. It belongs to the fans. It belongs to Davy. And it should be commemorated as such if it's performed. So he randomly selects someone from the front rows of the audience, a girl who obviously was not a plant, because if she had acted any more fangirl on stage, she would have blown up like a cartoon canary. I'm not kidding. And he, puts his arm around her shoulder, holds the mic in front of him, and she's singing. Now you can tell she's hyper emotional because I can tell, even from the balcony, that he's murmuring the words next to her head. So if she loses track of where she is, which she almost didn't, she can continue on with the way the song is supposed to be in the lyrics. But another reason she was not a plant, this girl, she had the heart for singing the song, absolutely, but she didn't have the skills of a singer. So, there were parts where she was flat, there were parts where she was off pitch. No, I'm not claiming to be a professional singer. I'm saying this is indicative of knowing that she was a legitimate random fan pull from the audience. But that did make me kind of sad, kind of weepy, because it is sad. I mean, when I was younger, I had the opportunity to meet Mickey and Davy backstage at a concert they did in Boston when the two of them were touring together, that my dad took me to. And obviously I didn't know either of them very well. It's not like we have some personal history together, but I'm somewhat sensitive to people's energies. It comes from being a partial empath. And I got upset because I remember meeting them, and I remember thinking, Mickey's energy was a bit frenetic. But all I sensed from Davy was warmth. Like, whenever he was standing within 5 feet of me, all I thought was, he seems really calm, and he seems really happy, and he seems very genuine. That to me reads as warmth. So it was a little sad in that respect at that point in the show. But today, my parents were going to go do a couple other things before they left. But of course, my parents being my parents, that is not how the day proceeded. So we ended up wandering around Grand Central a little bit, and then they got on their train back to our relative's house to get the car to go home. So it was a good trip. I mean, by the time I got back here at like noon, I ate some lunch I picked up on the way home because I don't have the energy to cook. Because by the time we got home last night, like I said, it was midnight. I woke up with Sam's alarm at 7:30 this morning, as opposed to my usual wake up on my own with the roosters 5 a.m., 6 a.m. So I've been out of it all day. So after I ate when I got home today, I'm looking at a clock and I realize I fell asleep for about 2.5 hours. I just now feel like myself for the day. Of course, my nap got interrupted when the UPS guy buzzed my door to deliver something I ordered last week. I mean, I'm glad it's here. It's a good thing, but now I kind of wish my nap hadn't been interrupted. The only other thing that happened at the concert was we ran into someone from our shared past, my dad and I, which is another long story and explanation and series of observations and thoughts. But it was an interesting experience, and I'm sorry Sam was in so much pain yesterday that the day ended up feeling like it went the way it went. But overall, I think everyone's consensus is the trip was worth it, the concert was worth it, and I can give you more details the next time I talk to you because I've been talking long enough. Alright, I hope your weekend was as interesting as mine.